Here are your notes for today: addition and subtraction with scientific notation. Before we get started here, I'm going to remind you, here's a little reminder, that when I have something like this, 5x plus 3x, I add those two guys together here. Since I have the same variable raised to the same power, I can add the 5 and the 3x and I get 8x. The same is true with scientific notation. If I have something like 5.32 times 10 to the 5th plus 5, or let's say 6.71 times 10 to the 5th. Notice how this 10 to the 5th, if I were to think of this 10 as x, I'd have x to the 5th, x to the 5th. So this here is like this variable raised to the same power. So these are like terms in that way. And so when I add these together, I end up with 5.32 plus 6.71. Remember, you line up the decimal points, which gets me here 3, and that's 10. Bring down my decimal point, and 5 plus 6 plus 1 is 12. 12.3 times 10 to the 5th power. Remember, when I add x like this, I don't change my exponent when I add. Same thing is true when I am using scientific notation. I keep this 10 to the 5th the same. I don't change it. I only add these guys, the coefficients here, together. Let's do another example. 1.5 times 10 to the 7th minus 3.4 times 10 to the 7th power. So notice I'm subtracting, but that doesn't matter. I still have the same 10 to the 7th, 10 to the 7th. So I still do the calculations the same as I did up here in this example. So I'm going to take 1.5 and I'm going to subtract 3.4 from it. And that's going to get me here, and when I subtract this, I get 1 and I get a negative 2, negative 2.1. And times 10 to the 7th power. Negative 2.1 times 10 to the 7th power. Sorry, that's a little bit messy right there. So let me have you guys do one on your own. $7.245 times 10 to the negative 2 power plus, let's see, 4.13 times 10 to the negative 2 power. So go ahead and pause the video, do this, you try, and then when you're done with it, unpause and we'll do it together. All right, let's see how you did. I am going to add these two guys. I know this 10 to the negative 2. I'm just going to treat that like it's an x, and I'm going to add these two numbers together here. 7.245 plus 4.13. Remember, I line up the decimal points. And then when I add this, I've got 573.11. You could put that in your calculator. You should end up with the same thing, times 10 to the negative 2. Okay, now those all work great when you're given the same 10 to the same raised to the same power. Now you might end up with something like this, where it gets a little bit more complicated, where it looks like this: 6.89 times 10 to the 4th plus 9.24 times 10 to the 5th. Notice here, raised to the 4th power, raised to the 5th power. And what we have to do here, we need, excuse me, to make sure that we have the same 10 raised to the same power, or this, they need to have the same exponent in order to be able to add them together. I can't add them together as they are right now. So what we're going to do is we're going to take this 5 and make it into a 4. And here's how we do it. We're going to move the decimal one place to the right. I'm sorry, did I say to the right? What am I doing here? Yes, I am right. Yes, I'm going to move the decimal one place to the right. And when I move the decimal to the right, I change my exponent. I have to change my exponent here. So let's rewrite this 6.89 times 10 to the 4th first. And we're going to add to it 92.4 times 10 to the 4th. And let's write right here a little rule for us. Okay, so I'm going to, when I move decimal to the right, exponent goes down. So when I move the decimal to the right, then my exponent is going to go down however far I move the decimal. If I move the decimal to the left, then my exponent goes up. So now at this point, I can just do this. I can solve this, not solve it, sorry. I can simplify this, how I've been simplifying all of these. 6.89 plus 92.4. Make sure I line up the decimals. And then whatever I get here, I'm going to multiply that by 10 to the 4th. So now I add these two together. 9 comes down here, 12, put my decimal point right there. Then I've got 9, and then I bring down that 9. So I added those together. So I've got 99.29 times 10 to the 4th. Now, this is not in scientific notation. Remember, in scientific notation, I've got to move my decimal point so that there's only one place here on the left. So remember, when I move the decimal point to the left, I raise my exponent however far I took it. So I'm going to have 9.929 times 10 to the 5th, because I moved the decimal point to the left 1, and so I needed to raise my exponent to the 1. If I move my decimal point to the left, I move my exponent up, or I raise my exponent. If I move my decimal to the right, I lower my exponent. Let's do one more. Let's do this one. 7.83 times 10 raised to the power of 8. And let's subtract 11,610,000. Okay, now notice this one is not raised to the power of anything. So I'm going to need to rewrite this in a way that I have 10 to the 8th power attached to this. So let me just rewrite here what I started with, 7.83 times 10 to the 8th. And now I want 10 to the 8th. So I'm going to find my decimal point here, and I'm going to move this over 8 places. Remember, if I move it to the left, I raise my exponent up. So I go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. That's all the way over here. So I'm going to rewrite, I'm subtracting 0.1161, and I can ignore all those other zeros. If you want to write them there, if that's helpful, you can, times 10 to the 8th. So I moved my decimal point 8 places to the left, and I raised my exponent times 8 times. Now, I'm just going to subtract. So I've got 10 to the 8th, I've got 10 to the 8th, so I've got my like terms, and I'm going to subtract the two. That gives me 7.83 minus, remember I line up my decimal points, 1161. And I subtract. Now, it might be easiest to put this in your calculator, but if you don't have a calculator handy, I've got to borrow from that 3, I've got to borrow from that 10. Now I have 10 minus 1, which is 9. I've got 9 minus 6, which is 3. 12 minus 1, 2 minus 1, sorry, is 1. 8 minus 1 is 7. And then I've got that 7, I can just subtract 0 from it. And that is my answer, except for I need to remember that times 10 to the 8th. And now I'm going to check, is this in scientific notation? I've got one number to the left of the decimal point, and I am all good with my scientific notation. Now, what I've done for these two is I needed to make sure that I had the same 10 raised to the same power. And I moved my decimal point and I changed my exponent accordingly to put that in the right spot. So let me give you guys one more to do on your own, and then you can do your extra work for today. So I've got 8.41 times 10 to the 3rd plus 9.71 times 10 to the 4th. All right, so this is a you try. And go ahead and pause and do the you try. When you're all done, unpause, and let's check our work together. Okay, let's see how we did. I'm going to change this one on the right to be 10 to the 3rd. It's 10 to the 4th right now. They're not like terms. I need to change this to 10 to the 3rd. 8.41 times 10 to the 3rd plus, now if I want to lower this, I want to lower my exponent one place. I need to move my decimal to the right one place. So I'm going to have now 97.1 times 10 to the 3rd. If I wanted to change this 10 to the 3rd to the 4th, I could have changed this side instead of this side. It doesn't matter. I just need them to both be the same, 10 to the 3rd or 10 to the 4th. I chose to make them both 10 to the 3rd. Now, since I have like terms, same 10 raised to the same power, I can now add my coefficients here. 97.1, 8.41. If you put this in the calculator, you don't need to worry about lining up the decimal points, but if you're going to do it by hand like I am, then you need to line up your decimal points. 0 plus 1 is 1. 1 plus 4 is 5. Bring my decimal point down. Here's 15. And I got 105.51 times 10 to the 3rd. Now I need to write this in scientific notation. And when I do that, I've got to move this guy 2 places to make that 1 all there by itself on the left, times 10 to the, I moved it to the left 2 places. I moved it to the left 2 places, so I raise my exponent 2 places. 3 plus 2 is 5. And you should be all set now for your homework tonight. Have a good day. Do good work. Show your work on your homework.